What about the safety net story? I mean, Gingrich is in favor of people sort of being out there on their own, you know, rugged entrepreneurs and so on. I mean, you can check that too. He represents a county, district, Cobb County, Georgia, which happens to be and he happens to hold the national championship in bringing federal subsidies to his rich constituents, to be precise, among suburban counties in the United States. Cobb County ranks third in federal subsidies, ranks right after Arlington, Virginia, which is part of the federal government. So of course they get a lot of federal subsidies, like the Pentagon's there and so on. And Brevard County, Florida, which is the home of the Space Center. So it's another part of the federal government. But if you move outside the federal government itself, Gingrich's district is number one. You know, they get more federal subsidies than anybody. The biggest employer in Cobb County is Lockheed, which is a publicly subsidized private profit corporation. They don't, you know, I mean, they sell commercial planes, but those are just, as everyone knows, they're just, you know, kind of, they use military technology is, the way the system is designed, technology is developed under the guise of the military and then handed over to private power when it works. That's true of everything. Airplanes, computers, the internet, you name it. And Cobb County is right at the center of this. Well, he's in favor of being, you know, all out on your own and fighting in this harsh world. Ridiculous. He's the biggest welfare freak in the country. That's literally true. Except that he wants the welfare to go to very rich people. Notice this is not what's called corporate welfare. What they call corporate welfare, which also never gets touched, is some different category completely. That's like giving a special, you know, shot in the arm to some particular corporation. This is something quite different. This is the way in which our economy works. The way our economy works, take just about any dynamic sector of it you know, at least that I know and I've studied, and you find that it's based on massive public subsidy and privatization of profit. Public pays the costs and takes the risks, and private systems make the profit, if there is any. Cobb County is just an extreme example of this. Now, you ask, how come people are deluded? Well, how often do you read this? You know, I mean, like, these aren't particularly subtle facts. I mean, these are like glaringly obvious facts.
That's my
but,
question.
Okay, because the reason is because people like Thomas Friedman and everyone else in the business knows you're not supposed to write about these things. I mean, I don't know. I'm not claiming he thinks about it. You know, in fact, the people who write about it are probably more deeply propagandized even than the people they're talking to. You know, you cannot be a good propagandist unless it's in your bones. I mean, it's extremely hard to lie. I think we all know that from personal experience. You know, it's hard to lie to people. Every one of us lies to people all the time, unless we're some kind of crazy angels. But the way we do it, I mean, I'm sure you know this, is you first convince yourself that what you're saying is true. You know, like you're an 8-year-old kid, and you steal a toy from your brother. You know, and your mother comes in and yells at you. You don't say, well, you know, I wanted the toy and he had it, so, you know, I took it because I'm stronger than him. What you say is, it really wasn't his, and besides, he'd taken a toy of mine, and anyway, I needed it more than he did, so it was right for me to take it. Okay, you know, I mean, if people haven't had that experience, there are some other species, I think. But that kind of experience goes all the way up to being a hotshot journalist for the New York Times. You know, you don't even make it into those circles unless you're already so deeply overwhelmed by doctrine and propaganda that you can't even think in other terms. And so you'll read, say, you know, liberal columnists in the New York Times very angrily saying, when people talk like this, nobody tells me what to write. I write anything I feel like, which is absolutely true. And if they didn't, if you know, people with real power weren't sure that they were going to say the right things, they wouldn't be in a position to write anything they feel like. Well, how does that work? You know, it starts from childhood. It starts in kindergarten on television. There's selection for obedience from the very first moment. I mean, you just think about, I mean, I'm guessing, maybe I'm wrong, so you tell me if I'm wrong, but at least when I think about my own school experience or any other school experience I know about, there was selection for obedience. I mean, I ended up going to fancy colleges like this place. And the way I did it was, I know exactly how I did it, by shutting up, you know. Like if I thought that the high school teacher was a horse's ass, which I did most of the time, I didn't say, hey, what you're saying, actually sometimes I did and got thrown out of class, but I learned not to say anything, just say, okay, you know, I'll do the next stupid assignment, and because I know that that's the way I get ahead, and ultimately I'll do this and that. You know, if you have you know, whatever ability it takes to do this kind of thing, and you are sufficiently disciplined and passive, you sort of make it through up to the higher echelons. There are people who don't. I mean, I know some, like some of my own kids just didn't, and they get into trouble. They're called behavior problems, or you know, disruptive, or you stick drugs in them, or something or other, because they're just too independent, you know. And people who are independent are a pain in the neck. You know, they disrupt the system, and they're going to be cut off one way or another. I can tell you, just you know, in graduate school, I'm teaching mostly graduate school, and you read applications, you can detect between the lines when the person who's writing a recommendation is telling you, keep away from this person, they're going to cause you trouble, which means usually they're going to go off and do their own thing or something like that. I don't want to exaggerate. In the sciences, it's somewhat different. And the reason is the sciences simply require this kind of independence. They'll die, you know, unless people are challenging all the time and questioning. So when you look at people who are, say, studying physics at MIT or something, yeah, it's totally different, because you just encourage people to be challenging and creative and so on and so forth. But in most areas, you don't. You want them to be passive and obedient and supportive, and to fit their, you know, to fit some kind of niche inside a managerial system, which is top down and doesn't make too much of a fuss and so on. And the people who don't accept this, they're weeded out in one or another fashion.